obligatory. And probably, perhaps no surprise to you, the participation actually went up. And they looked at that as carefully as they could, and they couldn't really define it 100%, but the impression they were left with was that there was a significant reluctance on families, within some families, although they weren't willing to admit it, to have some children involved. So it may not be, if you make these regulations obligatory, you may not see people more reluctant, you may actually see them less prohibited, so to speak, more interested in actually allowing young people to participate in the sport. So that's one of the positives that I think you can think about in relation to some other sports that have gone through this. Another thing I want to say about equestrian helmets, which I think has not been emphasized enough, and I think I speak for all the manufacturers, is boy do they work in terms of preventing death. And I say that from a physician and from a injury prevention specialist background. If you look at the most important injury prevention products in the United States for our culture, for instance, safety belts or seat belts, children's car seats, that sort of thing, the way public health scientists collect data includes the number of people that use the device, for instance, the number of children in safety seats, multiplied times the time, so you could call it, let's say, car seat years for children. And in the case of equestrian, it would be helmet wearing years. And the rate of deaths with those while they're in that product or using that product. And you can imagine with children in car seats that rate is significant, even though they're in a protected car seat, because in some car accidents, of course, many car accidents, you cannot protect the child, even if the child is in a safety seat. One of the most interesting things, and it's probably, I think I can still say this comfortably, in my career with injury prevention products, I have never seen an injury prevention product more effective from a death prevention. I'm not talking about concussions for a minute, from a death prevention side or analysis than equestrian helmets. And the reason for that is, for instance, Troxel has over 3 million helmets in the field. We produced the first helmet in 1992. So let's say that's almost 20 years, so we'll take an average of maybe 10 years or so. So that's, let's say, 30 million helmet years. Let's say it's 20 million, just not to exaggerate. 20 million helmet years. And we only know of one death in one of our helmets. It may be a few more, maybe there were some unreported, but that in relation to the rate of deaths in riders in the various disciplines, that is an indication, and I'm not saying that's a Troxel-only phenomenon. I am saying that the standard and the way those helmets are made for death prevention, it's really an effective injury prevention product. I only wish our children's car seats were that effective, for instance. I also want to say something about the difference between helmets. And this I'm only going to focus on Troxel because I haven't tested all the other helmets that are involved. We make some helmets that are very, very thick and soft because they can be softer because they're thicker. And actually the test results in that helmet on linear acceleration tests is significantly better than a helmet we make that's used to be very, very low profile. And we make those helmets that are thicker in mind of the fact that perhaps people with children and that sort of thing, with little kids, whatever it may be, we know when we make these helmets that some of our helmets actually function differently than some other helmets. So it's not like we make every helmet exactly the same. All of them are the same in terms of covering a standard, but this wasn't ever brought up earlier in our discussions and talking about standards. And the standard is just sort of something that's a minimum that all of the manufacturers must do. The last point I make is the point about governmental regulations and various ways that injury prevention products have been regulated. One of the good things about the equestrian world is it doesn't have a lot of governmental intervention. Because that can get painful. It can get expensive, it can get sort of problems, all sorts of things. But if you've been following the news, you know recently the government has become involved with the issue of cycling helmets and reporting on those, and are the right ones being monitored and all that sort of thing. And I think if the equestrian organizations continue to advance and do a good job, you'll keep the CPSC and maybe the government rules people out of the fray of all this. So those are some points I would make, just that I think are what Wirt made earlier, and if there's any questions for me, I guess I should take it now, or should I hold it for later?
Actually, we'll do it later if that's all right.
Sure. Thank you all.